Miss Rodriguez, this court does not have time for theatrical displays of martyrdom. Judge Harrison Whitmore's voice cut through the federal courthouse like a blade, sharp with the casual cruelty of someone who believed his robes made him untouchable. Captain Maria Phantom Rodriguez didn't flinch at the deliberate mispronunciation of her rank. At 32, she had learned that silence could be more powerful than protest. From her wheelchair at the defendant's table, she maintained perfect military bearing despite the titanium rods holding her spine together and the prosthetic legs hidden beneath her dress slacks. The courtroom buzzed with uncomfortable energy as Judge Whitmore shuffled through papers with theatrical disdain. Several veterans in the gallery exchanged glances, recognizing the disrespect being shown to one of their own. "I see we have another benefits dispute," Whitmore announced, his voice dripping with dismissive authority. Rodriguez versus the Department of Veterans Affairs. Another attempt to extract maximum compensation from overtaxed government resources. Maria's attorney, David Chen, rose respectfully. "Your Honor, this case concerns benefits legally owed to Captain Rodriguez under federal statute." Former Captain Whitmore interrupted sharply. "We needn't inflate titles for inactive personnel, especially when said personnel are requesting experimental procedures at taxpayer expense." The correction stung not because it diminished Maria's ego, but because it dismissed the sacrifice that had earned her those rank insignia. She made a careful notation in the small recorder hidden in her lap, evidence for an investigation that had been building for 3 years. "Captain Rodriguez," Chen continued firmly, "served with distinction in naval special warfare before sustaining injuries during a classified operation that resulted in—" Yes, Whitmore waved dismissively. "Classified operation. How convenient that we cannot verify the circumstances of these alleged heroics." Maria's hands, once steady enough to hit targets at 1,200 meters in crosswinds, tightened almost imperceptibly on her wheelchair's armrest. Her pale green eyes tracked Whitmore's movements with the same intensity she had once used to acquire targets through rifle scopes. "Your Honor," Chen pressed, "the medical documentation clearly establishes Captain Rodriguez's need for advanced prosthetics to maintain mobility and independence. The VA's denial appears to be based on fiscal responsibility." Whitmore cut him off. "This court has seen numerous veterans attempting to exploit their service for personal gain. Real heroes don't typically spend their time pursuing litigation." A ripple of shock ran through the gallery. Several veterans shifted uncomfortably, recognizing an attack on all of them disguised as criticism of one. Maria remained perfectly still, her training evident in her economy of movement. But something flickered in her expression, not anger, but cold recognition. She had been studying Judge Whitmore for months, and today's behavior confirmed suspicions that went far beyond judicial bias. Furthermore, Whitmore continued, warming to his theme, "These so-called classified operations conveniently prevent verification of the circumstances surrounding Miss Rodriguez's condition." The deliberate cruelty of referring to her combat injuries as a condition drew gasps from observers. But Maria's expression remained neutral as she made another notation. 3 years of investigation were about to culminate in this courtroom, and Judge Whitmore had just provided the final piece of evidence she needed. During the morning recess, Maria wheeled herself to a quiet corner of the courthouse hallway where David Chen was making urgent phone calls. Her apparent vulnerability, a disabled woman struggling with bureaucracy, had made her invisible to the people she'd been investigating. "The call is made," Chen said quietly, ending his conversation. "Admiral Santos confirms the package was delivered to the Justice Department this morning. FBI assets are in position." Maria nodded, checking her watch with practiced precision. Timeline accelerate. "Whitmore's behavior is even worse than we anticipated. He's feeling completely secure. Are you sure you want to proceed?" Chen asked, concern evident in his voice. "Once we trigger this, there's no going back. Your cover will be blown permanently." Maria's gaze drifted to the memorial wall displaying photos of fallen service members' faces that reminded her why she had spent 3 years in this wheelchair, pretending to be a broken veteran when she was actually conducting the most sensitive counterintelligence operation in Navy history. "My team deserves justice," she said quietly. "Whitmore took money to compromise the intelligence that got them killed. Today, he pays for it." When court reconvened, Whitmore seemed emboldened by what he perceived as Maria's submission during the morning session. His remarks became increasingly personal and inappropriate. "These experimental prosthetics," he said, reviewing medical documents with obvious disdain, "represent a significant expense to taxpayers. Perhaps if Miss Rodriguez had been careful in her alleged operations, such accommodations wouldn't be necessary." The victim blaming drew audible gasps from the gallery. Chen was on his feet immediately with objections, but Whitmore overruled him with obvious satisfaction. The court notes, Whitmore continued, that many so-called disabled veterans have found ways to overcome their limitations through personal responsibility rather than government dependence. Maria made another notation, her movements deliberate and visible. For the first time Whitmore noticed the small device in her lap. "What is that apparatus?" he demanded, his composure slipping slightly. "A memory aid, Your Honor," Maria replied calmly. "Permitted under Courthouse Regulation 7 for disabled participants in legal proceeding. Remove it immediately," Whitmore ordered, color rising in his face. Chen stood again. "Your Honor, my client suffered traumatic brain injury in the same incident that resulted in her physical injuries. She has every right to assisted device. I made no ruling permitting recording equipment in my courtroom," Whitmore insisted, his authority clearly threatened by something he couldn't control. As they argued, the courtroom doors opened quiet. A woman in navy dress uniform entered and took a seat in the back row, her admiral's stars catching the afternoon light. Admiral Patricia Santos's presence sent whispers through the gallery, but Whitmore was too focused on the recording device to notice the new arrival. "Your Honor," Maria said quietly, "I'd like to request permission to represent myself for a special motion." Whitmore paused, clearly surprised by her initiative. "You wish to dismiss your counsel?" "For this motion only, Your Honor. I believe I'm uniquely qualified to present certain evidence that's just become available." Whitmore's expression shifted to cruel amusement. "By all means, Miss Rodriguez. This should be entertaining." He had no idea that his career was about to end. Maria wheeled herself to the center of the courtroom with military precision, positioning herself to address both the judge and the gallery. The afternoon light streaming through tall windows illuminated her face as she prepared to spring a trap 3 years in the making. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carrying new authority, "I move for your immediate recusal from this case based on undisclosed conflicts of interest that materially affect these proceedings." Whitmore's amused expression faltered. "On what possible ground?" "On the grounds of judicial corruption, conspiracy against the United States government and treason," Maria stated with the calm precision of someone reading operational parameters rather than leveling explosive accusations. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Whitmore banged his gavel furiously. "This is outrageous. You have no standing to make such allegations." "I have both standing and evidence," Maria replied, reaching into a folder Chen had positioned before her. "Evidence gathered during a 3-year counterintelligence operation, authorized under Naval Intelligence Directive." All eyes turned to Admiral Santos, who remained impassive in her seat, watching the proceedings with predatory intensity. "This is contempt of court," Whitmore declared, his face flushing. "You cannot fabricate wild accusations." "I agree completely, Your Honor," Maria interrupted, her voice dropping several degrees. "Actions have consequences. That's precisely why I'm here." From her folder, Maria produced the first exhibit, high-resolution photographs showing Whitmore in what appeared to be clandestine meetings with individuals in expensive suits. These images were taken on February 15th of this year at the Meridian Hotel in Prague, Maria announced, handing copies to the court clerk. "They show Your Honor meeting with Viktor Kozlov and Chen Weiming, representatives of Titan Defense Systems, a contractor currently under federal investigation for selling classified military technology to hostile foreign governments." Whitmore's face went pale as he recognized himself in the damning photographs. "A business meeting during a judicial conference proves nothing," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "A business meeting you failed to disclose on mandatory travel reports," Maria counted, "with representatives of a company whose cases have appeared before your bench 9 times in the past 2 years. With favorable rulings in each instance despite overwhelming evidence of their criminal activities." Before Whitmore could respond, Maria produced another document. "These are financial records showing transfers from Titan subsidiary accounts to Cayman Holdings, controlled by Whitmore Consulting Group, a firm owned by your wife Elena Whitmore." The gallery was now completely silent, spectators leaning forward to catch every word as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. "Each transfer," Maria continued relentlessly, "occurred within 72 hours of your favorable rulings totaling $2.3 million over 18 months. Whitmore's knuckles were white as he gripped the bench. "These documents are clearly fabricated. The documents are authentic, Your Honor. They've been verified by forensic accountants at the Treasury Department, the FBI and Naval Intelligence." As she spoke, 4 men in suits entered the courtroom and positioned themselves near the exits, their federal credentials visible. "But perhaps most damning," Maria said, producing a sealed envelope with the Department of Justice seal, "are these transcripts of phone conversations between yourself and intermediaries for foreign intelligence service." The lead FBI agent stepped forward as Maria continued her methodical destruction of Judge Whitmore's carefully constructed facade. Harrison Whitmore, you are under investigation for judicial corruption, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and potential treason against the United States. Whitmore looked wildly around the courtroom that had been his domain of absolute power just minutes before. This is impossible. You cannot do this to me. I'm a federal judge. You're a federal judge who sold classified information to foreign intelligence services, Maria said, her voice cutting through his protests like a sniper's bullet. Information that resulted in the deaths of American Special Operations personnel. For the first time, personal emotion colored her words, and the courtroom felt the weight of her barely contained fury. Delta Team 7 didn't die because of mission failure or bad intelligence. Maria continued. They died because operational details were compromised through your courtroom during the Titan Defense classified evidence hearings. Intelligence that you personally ensured reached enemy hands. Admiral Santos chose this moment to stand, her dress uniform commanding immediate attention as she walked down the center aisle. Judge Whitmore, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 decades in naval intelligence. The materials Captain Rodriguez has presented are part of Operation Silent Justice, a counterintelligence operation I personally authorized at the highest levels of government. The revelation hit the courtroom like a shockwave. This had never been about VA benefits. The entire proceeding had been an elaborate sting operation with Whitmore as the target, and Maria as both bait and hunter. That's not possible, Whitmore stammered, his world collapsing around him. She's disabled. She's just a broken veteran. My physical limitations became the perfect cover for this operation, Maria explained coldly. You and your associates believed I posed no threat because of my wheelchair. Your prejudice blinded you to the fact that my mind remained my deadliest weapon. She gestured to the recording device that had caused such concern earlier. Every word you've spoken today has been recorded and transmitted to federal investigators. Your treatment of disabled veterans, your casual dismissal of military service, your complete lack of respect for those who sacrificed for this country, all documented. I never meant for anyone to die, Whitmore said weakly as FBI agents approached the bench. Few traitors do, Admiral Santos replied with ice-cold authority. Yet they remain responsible for the consequences of their actions. As the agents placed Whitmore in handcuffs, Maria felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had carried for 3 years. The faces of her fallen teammates seemed to smile from memory, finally able to rest, knowing their deaths had been avenged. Outstanding work, Captain, Admiral Santos said, approaching Maria's wheelchair. Your team would be proud. Maria nodded, emotion briefly crossing her features before her training reasserted itself. Mission accomplished, Admiral, though I suspect this is just the beginning. Indeed, Santos confirmed. Whitmore's records will lead us to the rest of the network. The war for justice continued. As Whitmore was led away in chains, the atmosphere in the courtroom transformed completely. Veterans in the gallery stood at attention, recognizing they had witnessed not just legal proceedings, but the culmination of a warrior's promise to her fallen comrade. In the immediate aftermath of Whitmore's arrest, the courtroom became a command center as federal agents coordinated the broader operation that had been triggered by Maria's revelation. Admiral Santos conferred with Justice Department officials while Maria provided detailed briefings on 3 years of methodical investigation. The network extends far beyond Whitmore, Maria explained to the assembled law enforcement team. Our analysis indicates at least 7 federal judges, 12 prosecutors, and numerous court clerks have been compromised through the same financial incentive structure. She produced a thick folder containing organizational charts that read like a who's who of federal corruption. Titan Defense Systems has been systematically purchasing influence throughout the judicial system, ensuring favorable treatment for cases involving classified military technology. FBI Special Agent Jennifer Walsh studied the documentation with growing alarm. The scope of this operation, it's unprecedented. How did you map the entire network while maintaining your cover? Maria's expression showed the calculation that had made her legendary as a military sniper. 3 years ago, I was medically retired after the incident that killed my team. Instead of accepting that retirement, I volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in naval intelligence, going completely dark to investigate the leak that caused their deaths. You've been undercover for 3 years, Agent Walsh asked, clearly impressed by the operational discipline required. Every aspect of my civilian life was constructed for this mission, Maria confirmed. The wheelchair, the disability claims, the apparent vulnerability, all designed to make me invisible to the targets while positioning me to observe their operations. Admiral Santos joined the conversation. Captain Rodriguez volunteered for this assignment despite having other options for her career. She chose to sacrifice 3 years of her life to ensure no other teams would suffer the same fate as Delta 7. David Chen, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. The legal proceedings today were just the final phase. Maria has been gathering evidence at veterans events, disability hearings, and military functions for months, building relationships with court personnel who didn't realize they were being cultivated by a federal investigator. The beauty of the operation, Maria added, was that my target's prejudices worked in my favor. They saw a disabled veteran and assumed I was harmless, desperate, easily manipulated. They never considered that someone in a wheelchair might be the most dangerous person in the room. Agent Walsh reviewed the evidence with professional appreciation. This will be the largest judicial corruption case in U.S. history. The reverberations will be felt throughout the federal court system. Good, Maria said simply. Every compromised official represents a threat to national security and a betrayal of the oath they swore to uphold justice. As the formal evidence transfer continued, Maria reflected on the cost of the operation. 3 years of pretending to be broken when she was actually conducting sophisticated surveillance. 3 years of enduring pity and condescension while building cases against federal officials. 3 years of carrying the memory of her fallen teammates while working toward this moment of justice. But as she watched Whitmore's associates being arrested in coordinated raids across the country, she knew the sacrifice had been worth it. The promise to Delta Team 7 was finally being fulfilled. Later that evening, in a secure conference room at the federal building, Maria sat across from Admiral Santos as they conducted the operational debrief. The adrenaline of the courtroom confrontation had faded, leaving behind the exhaustion of someone who had spent 3 years living a carefully constructed lie. The psychological evaluation will be mandatory, Santos explained gently. 3 years of deep cover operations, especially under these circumstances, take a toll that we need to document and address. Maria nodded, understanding the necessity. I'm aware of the protocols, Admiral. I've been preparing for the transition back to my actual identity. About that, Santos said, her expression becoming more serious. The success of Operation Silent Justice has caught the attention of very senior people. There are opportunities being discussed that would utilize your unique skill set in new ways. What kind of opportunity? Maria asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Counterintelligence operations that require someone who can become invisible in plain sight. Someone who can use perceived weakness as operational strength. Santos paused. The disability rights movement, veterans advocacy groups, congressional oversight committees. There are numerous environments where your cover identity could provide access to sensitive information. Maria was quiet for a long moment, processing the implication. You're asking me to make the mission permanent, to spend my career pretending to be disabled while conducting intelligence operations. I'm asking you to consider it, Santos corrected. The alternative is full medical retirement with honors and recognition that you've more than earned. The choice is entirely yours. Through the conference room windows, Maria could see the city lights of Washington, D.C., where countless officials were working in systems that might be compromised by foreign influence. The network they had exposed today was extensive, but intelligence suggested it was only one of several similar operations targeting American institutions. My team died because someone sold information for money, Maria said finally. How many other teams are at risk from corruption we haven't identified yet? That's the question that keeps intelligence officials awake at night, Santos acknowledged. Maria thought about the faces of her fallen teammates. The promises she had made in the moments before her own injuries rendered her unconscious. Justice for Delta Team 7 was only the beginning of a larger mission to protect American forces from betrayal within their own system. I'll need modifications to my cover identity, Maria said, her decision made. The Maria Rodriguez, who appeared in court today, is too well known now. I'll need a new background, new documentation, new operational parameters. Santos smiled with satisfaction. I thought you might say that we've already begun developing the next phase of your cover identity. Someone who can move through different environments, access different networks of potential corruption. What's the timeline? Maria asked, already mentally preparing for the next chapter of her indefinite undercover assignment. 6 months for full preparation. Your next mission will take you into congressional oversight committees where defense contractors have unusual influence on military appropriation. Maria nodded, accepting the burden of continued service in shadows where her sacrifices would never be publicly acknowledged. The war for justice was far from over. 6 months later, Maria Rodriguez ceased to exist. In her place, Dr. Sarah Mitchell appeared, a disabled academic specializing in government accountability, whose wheelchair and soft-spoken demeanor made her invisible to the powerful people she was investigating. But before that transformation was complete, Maria had one final obligation to fulfill. The memorial service for Delta Team 7 was held at Arlington National Cemetery on a crisp autumn morning. For the first time in 3 years, Maria appeared in her naval dress uniform, her medals precisely positioned, her bearing unmistakably military despite the wheelchair. The families of her fallen teammates had never known the full truth about how their loved ones died. Official reports cited operational security failure without identifying the specific betrayal that had cost 7 lives. Today they would finally understand. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Maria said, addressing each family member individually, died protecting intelligence assets during a classified operation. She never knew that the enemy had been given her team's exact location and operational timeline by someone who sold that information for personal profit. She moved methodically through the list, giving each family the truth they deserved, while maintaining operational security for ongoing investigations. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres died providing covering fire so his teammates could reach extraction. He held his position for 47 minutes against overwhelming odds, because he believed help was coming. He couldn't have known that the extraction coordinates had been compromised. As she spoke, Maria felt the weight of promises kept and obligations fulfilled. These families had suffered not just from the loss of their loved ones, but from the uncertainty of not understanding why those losses had occurred. Your family members didn't die because of mission failure or enemy superiority, Maria concluded. They died because of betrayal at the highest levels of our own government. That betrayal has now been exposed and punished. Admiral Santos stood beside the memorial wall, watching as Maria provided closure that had been 3 years in the making. The operation had succeeded beyond all expectations, but the cost to its primary operative was evident in Maria's precise, controlled delivery of painful truths. After the service, as families began to depart, Maria remained at the memorial wall. The names of Delta Team 7 were engraved in black granite, alongside thousands of other service members who had given their lives for their country. They would be proud, Admiral Santos said, joining Maria at the wall. They would want us to continue the mission. Maria replied, "There are other teams at risk from corruption we haven't identified yet." Santos nodded. Dr. Sarah Mitchell will have access to congressional oversight meetings where defense appropriations are decided. Her research into government accountability will provide perfect cover for investigating suspicious patterns in military contracting. Maria touched each name on the memorial wall one final time. Delta Team 7, mission continuing. Justice served, but the war goes on. As she wheeled away from Arlington, Maria Rodriguez disappeared into history. Sarah Mitchell's new identity was waiting, along with investigations that would take her deeper into the networks of power where American security was bought and sold by people who had never worn a uniform or heard incoming fire. The promise to her fallen teammates would never be complete, as long as corruption threatened other military families. Sarah Mitchell's first congressional hearing took place in a sterile committee room where defense contractors presented their latest proposals to lawmakers who controlled billions in military spending. Sarah sat quietly in the back, her academic credentials providing perfect cover for detailed observation of interactions that seemed routine but followed suspicious patterns. The advanced targeting systems represent a significant capability enhancement for Special Operations Forces, testified Jonathan Hayes, CEO of Meridian Tactical Solutions, the same company that had emerged from the wreckage of Titan Defense Systems. Committee Chairman Senator Robert Kane nodded approvingly. And the timeline for deployment? 6 months for initial integration, assuming streamlined approval processes, Hayes replied, his gaze briefly meeting that of committee member Senator Patricia Wells, who had been asking unusually specific questions about operational security protocol. Sarah made careful notes, her academic cover allowing her to request detailed documentation that would have been suspicious coming from other sources. Her published research on accountability mechanisms in government contracting gave her legitimate reasons to examine financial relationships between lawmakers and defense companies. After the hearing, Sarah approached Senator Wells with the deferential manner expected from a disabled academic seeking information for her research. "Senator Wells, I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Georgetown University," she said, offering her business card. I'm researching oversight mechanisms for defense contracting. Your questions today were quite insightful. Wells studied Sarah with the quick assessment of a politician evaluating potential threats or opportunities. Dr. Mitchell, yes, I've read your work on government accountability. Impressive research methodology. Thank you, Senator. I'm particularly interested in how committee members ensure operational security when reviewing classified capabilities. The balance between oversight and security seems challenging. Wells smiled. Indeed, perhaps we could discuss this further sometime. My office handles numerous classified briefings that might inform your research. Sarah accepted the invitation with appropriate academic enthusiasm, knowing she had just gained access to the next phase of her investigation. Senator Wells's pattern of questions suggested knowledge that exceeded her committee assignments, indicating possible unauthorized access to classified information. 3 weeks later, Sarah sat in Senator Wells's private office, her wheelchair positioned to seem non-threatening while sophisticated recording equipment, hidden in her academic materials, captured every word of what would become evidence in the largest congressional corruption investigation in American history. The special operations community operates with insufficient oversight, Wells was saying, apparently comfortable discussing classified matters with someone she perceived as a harmless academic. Certain adjustments to operational parameters could improve both efficiency and accountability. Sarah nodded encouragingly while mentally translating Wells's euphemisms. The senator was discussing the sale of special operations intelligence to foreign buyers, using the same rationalization that had motivated Judge Whitmore. These adjustments, Sarah said carefully, would they involve sharing operational details with oversight bodies outside the normal command structure? Wells's confirmation would complete the evidence needed to expose another network of corruption that threatened American military personnel. The promise to Delta Team 7 continued to drive every aspect of Sarah's fabricated existence, ensuring that other teams would never suffer the same betrayal. 18 months after Judge Whitmore's arrest, the network of corruption had revealed itself to be far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Senator Wells was the 7th congressional official arrested in what the media had dubbed Operation Cleanhouse, though they never suspected that a single disabled academic had provided the evidence for most of the prosecutions. Sarah Mitchell sat in yet another committee hearing, this one investigating the systematic penetration of American defense systems by foreign intelligence services. The irony was not lost on her that she was now testifying as an expert witness in hearings about the very corruption she had helped expose. Mitchell, asked Committee Chairman Senator Rodriguez, your research suggests that foreign influence operations targeted specific vulnerabilities in our oversight systems. Can you elaborate? Sarah adjusted her glasses, maintaining the academic persona that had provided such effective cover. The pattern shows sophisticated understanding of American institutional weaknesses. Senator, the perpetrators exploited our assumptions about who poses security threats, focusing on officials whose positions provided access to classified information but whose personal vulnerabilities made them susceptible to recruitment. And the methodology for identifying these vulnerabilities: financial pressure, ideological alignment, and in some cases simple greed, Sarah replied. The foreign operators demonstrated remarkable patience, building relationships over years before making actual recruitment attempts. Senator Martinez leaned forward. Your research also indicates that traditional counterintelligence methods were insufficient to detect this network. Why? Sarah paused, knowing her answer would carry the weight of 3 years spent in deep cover. Because the corruption relied on existing prejudices and assumptions. Officials who should have been suspicious instead became complacent, because they underestimated the capabilities of people they perceived as non-threatening. After the hearing, Sarah wheeled herself to the memorial wall outside the Capitol building, where the names of service members killed in recent conflicts were displayed. Among them, she found the section dedicated to special operations personnel lost to operational security failure. Delta Team 7 was listed there, along with 12 other teams that had been lost to compromised intelligence over the past 5 years. Sarah's investigation had revealed that most of these losses were connected to the same network of corrupt officials she had spent her career dismantling. Admiral Santos approached, her presence still commanding even in civilian clothes. Outstanding testimony today, Doctor. The committee was clearly impressed by your expertise. The expertise came at a cost, Sarah replied quietly. 4 years of living as someone else. 4 years of pretending to be broken while hunting the people who actually broke our systems. And the result is that no more teams will die from the kind of betrayal that killed Delta 7, Santos pointed out. Your sacrifice has saved lives we'll never be able to count. Sarah nodded, understanding the mathematics of her mission. What's next, Admiral? The network is broken, but there will be others. There are always others, Santos confirmed. "The question is whether you're ready for the next mission, or whether it's time for Sarah Mitchell to retire and for you to reclaim your actual identity." Sarah looked at the memorial wall one final time. "The promise I made to my team doesn't have an expiration date." 5 years after the courthouse confrontation that ended Judge Whitmore's career, the woman who had been Maria Rodriguez, Sarah Mitchell, and half a dozen other identities finally returned to Arlington National Cemetery for a ceremony that had been years in the making. The memorial service for Delta Team 7 was being expanded into a permanent exhibit honoring special operations personnel lost to intelligence failures. For the first time, the full truth about their deaths could be acknowledged publicly. Standing before the memorial wall, no longer in a wheelchair but supported by discreet braces that managed her remaining injuries, the woman now known simply as Commander Ghost addressed the families who had waited so long for answers. "Your loved ones died not because they failed, but because they were failed," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd of military personnel, government officials, and family members. "They were betrayed by people who took oaths to protect them, and then sold that protection for personal gain." The investigation she had conducted had ultimately exposed 47 corrupt officials across federal, state, and local governments. The network had been far more extensive than anyone suspected, with tentacles reaching into military contracting, judicial proceedings, congressional oversight, and intelligence sharing. "The promise I made to Delta Team 7 5 years ago was simple," she continued, "that their deaths would not be forgotten, and that the betrayal that killed them would be exposed and punished." Admiral Santos, now wearing her 4th star, stood among the audience as the woman who had sacrificed her identity for justice spoke about the cost of keeping promises to the dead. "That promise has been kept. The network that sold American military secrets has been dismantled. The officials who prioritized personal profit over American lives have been prosecuted. The systems that allowed such corruption to flourish have been reformed." She paused, looking at each family member individually. "But most importantly, your family members' names will now be remembered not as victims of operational failure, but as heroes who died serving their country with honor." The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of the new memorial plaque, which listed not only the names of Delta Team 7 but also the 16 other special operations teams whose deaths had been connected to the same corruption network. As the crowd began to disperse, Admiral Santos approached the woman who had given up 5 years of her life to serve a mission that could never be fully acknowledged. "What now, Commander?" Santos asked. "You've earned the right to any assignment you want or to retirement with full honor." The former Maria Rodriguez, Sarah Mitchell, and Commander Ghost looked at the memorial wall where her teammates' names would be remembered forever. "Now I go back to being who I was before all this started," she said simply. "A soldier who keeps promises to her teammates, no matter how long it takes or what it costs." She walked away from Arlington for the final time, her mission complete but her commitment to justice as unwavering as the day she had first sworn her oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The promise had been kept, the debt had been paid, the mission was finally complete.